Continuing to Episode 8, after Goblin Slayer and the others rested, they are on the move again. Goblin Slayer suggests setting traps and going up. The elf is confused about why they are going up this time. Goblin Slayer then explains that when goblins reside in a building like this, the leader is either at the very bottom or the very top. The goblin leader this time also needs to be cautious, as it might be a powerful goblin shaman who can control Mokul Mbembe. After that, they coincidentally find an elevator going upward. To activate the elevator, it seems they have to press corresponding symbols. The priestess recalls the key they took from the goblin guard outside. Initially, she thought the numbers on the key were just key codes. She then tries pressing the symbols according to the key, and it works. The elevator door opens. The elf remains worried about traps in the elevator, but Goblin Slayer isn't concerned. He says ancient buildings like this are not easily tampered with by goblins. Inside the elevator, the elf apologizes and expresses gratitude. She originally invited them here to attend a wedding ceremony, but now they find themselves fighting goblins again. The dwarf doesn't mind. In fact, he's happy to make the elf village owe him. Moreover, they are all friends. The lizardman states that they have often been helped by the elf, so this is nothing. Especially Goblin Slayer, who can't stay quiet when he hears the word goblin. The elf reminisces that the group has been together for a year. The dwarf asks the elf not to forget them after 100 years. The elf assures she won't forget her friends. Back to seriousness, the elf hears the sound of wind, footsteps, and rustling above. The number of goblins is likely considerable. Goblin Slayer seeks opinions on the method of attack. According to the lizard man, it's better to stick to the traditional approach. Goblin Slayer will be at the front, lizard men and dwarf on the sides, the priestess behind the elf. Lastly, the elf herself will watch from all directions and assist while giving directions. Before exiting the elevator to attack, Goblin Slayer makes sure everything is ready. After the door opens, he instructs the others to run straight towards the enemy, and if they encounter a goblin shaman, prioritize killing it first. If the goblin shaman uses strange magic, as long as one person survives, Goblin Slayer asks that person to turn the tide. After that, the door opens, and they immediately charge at the goblins. While dispatching the goblins one by one, the elf sees a goblin carrying a staff. It's undoubtedly the goblin shaman. Goblin Slayer asks the elf to target it with an arrow. The goblins start breaking through to the back where the priestess is positioned. Her cheek even gets grazed by an arrow that passes by. Finally, the priestess unleashes her divine grace to drive away the approaching goblins. The light dazzles the goblins to the point where they leap off the building. Seeing the scattered goblin horde, the elf immediately targets the goblin shaman. She manages to hit its right arm. As a result, the goblin shaman becomes enraged and releases a spell of black smoke. Apparently, the black smoke makes anyone affected struggle to maintain consciousness. Goblin Slayer, the elf, dwarf, and lizardman almost collapse. This gives the goblins a chance to counterattack. Only the priestess remains standing. However, she feels traumatized witnessing the horrific scene. She recalls her old party members who fell to goblins. Despite that, she feels she must do something to prevent it from happening again. The priestess notices blood flowing from the goblin shaman's arm. She thinks of an idea that initially seems unthinkable, but there's no other choice. Finally, the priestess uses her Purify Grace to cleanse the goblin shaman's blood. Instantly, the blood turns into clear water. The blood flowing on the goblin shaman's body also transforms into ordinary water. This renders it paralyzed and unable to move. However, the priestess feels truly guilty. A sacred grace that should be used for healing is instead used for killing. Goblin Slayer, now recovered, approaches the priestess and comforts her. Even though he killed with that grace, it doesn't negate the fact that he saved his friends. After that, Goblin Slayer drinks a healing potion and shares it with the others. It seems it's time for Goblin Slayer to use his traps. They break through the remaining goblins to reach the edge of the building. From there, they jump down, and the dwarf uses falling control magic. This allows them to descend safely. Then it's time for the traps to take action. This method is often used by Goblin Slayer to exterminate goblins. From the elevator door, a massive amount of water pours out, flooding the entire roof of the building. The elf is a bit worried about the structure. Goblin Slayer reassures her that the building won't collapse. With tunneling techniques, the holes they made in the fortress will soon shrink and fill up. The elf expresses concern about the water in the building. Goblin Slayer says they just need to report it to the elf village for resolution later. One thing is for sure, once they return to the village, they will attend the wedding ceremony. Suddenly, the dwarf asks if the elf has ever thought about getting married. She answers that she hasn't thought about it at least for the next 1,000 years. Unexpectedly, the lizardman says he will propose to the elf when he becomes a dragon. While they are just joking, who knows what will happen in 1,000 years? Meanwhile, the priestess still looks uneasy about her actions earlier. She doubts whether she still deserves the grace from Mother Earth. At that moment, the day begins to dawn. Atop the ancient building, a beautiful rainbow appears. The phenomenon seems to provide an answer to the priestess. In another part of the world, a group of heroes is battling dangerous monsters at the recently opened seal of the Hellgate. A wizard in their group senses that the enemy's magic circle has been damaged. If that's the case, resealing it could be easy. It seems there are other adventurers there as well. Earlier, Sword Maiden interpreted the inscription on the stone brought by Goblin Slayer. The stone stated that the Hellgate would open. Despite the seal being in place, the gate would open again. Previously, Sword Maiden had sent a warning letter to the Elf King and the kings in her kingdom. It's possible that the elves who assisted them damaged the enemy's magic circle there. Back to the elf village, the wedding ceremony finally took place in the evening. The elf elder and the elf cousin exchanged vows in the Elvish language. The wind whispered through the forest, seemingly congratulating them on their union. Next, they performed an elf wedding tradition. The elf cousin aimed an arrow towards the forest, believing that where the arrow lands, a new forest will grow. After that, the wedding celebration began. They enjoyed themselves accompanied by music. The dwarf was surrounded by some elves who wanted to hear stories about goblin extermination. However, he asked for the lizardman's help as he couldn't handle the elves alone. Meanwhile, Goblin Slayer was chatting with the elf. By the way, the elf, the farm girl, and the receptionist were wearing dresses they bought in the water town. While Goblin Slayer was chatting, he asked if the elf was allowed to leave her homeland again. The elf said not to worry. For the elves, her 1-year absence is considered a journey of only 2 to 3 days. Moreover, the elf elder said she would write to her when she has time. After chatting with Goblin Slayer, the elf approached the priestess, who looked melancholic. She asked the priestess to share her worries. Since this is a celebration, everyone should appear happy as much as possible. The priestess still doesn't reveal her concerns but inquires about the meaning of the elvish wedding vows. The elf says it's just a prayer to be together forever. As if knowing what's bothering the priestess, the elf asks her to pray to Mother Earth as well. She says the elves also have a connection with the goddess. With that, the priestess offers a prayer for the marriage. As before, the wind blows as if providing an answer. Done with the serious mood, the elf invites the priestess to have fun with the farm girl and receptionist. The farm girl feels nervous because it's her first time attending such a party. In contrast, the receptionist appears very relaxed. She says she was educated in her hometown. Moreover, as a government employee, she often attends events like this. Suddenly, the voices of joyful elf girls are heard. It seems the elf elder, as the bride, will throw the flower crown that adorns her head. Rumor has it that whoever catches the flower crown will also get married. The 4 of them decide to join in the catch. While discussing it, the farm girl suddenly glances at Goblin Slayer. The elf elder then throws her flower crown. However, it's unclear who managed to catch it. After Goblin Slayer and the others had fun for 3 days and 3 nights, they returned to the city. It's been quite a while since then, but the elf still hasn't received a letter from her sister. It's likely that the wedding celebration in the elf village is still ongoing to this day.